Hey everyone, Coach Lori here with another amazing session with conversations with courageous cancer warriors. And today's guest, I am very excited to introduce Dr. Saundra Dalton-Smith. Now, she is a board-certified internal medicine physician. She's also an author who helps patients that have burnout recover their life and show them the importance of rest. Dr. Dalton-Smith, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
So first and foremost, let's get right into it and let's talk about how you help people with burnout.
Well, it's one of those situations where as a medical doctor and board certified internist, most people were initially coming to me, the quick fix kind of evaluation of why they were tired. And I would do the lab work and I do all the testing and I was getting no positive results. And, it's really frustrating when, as a physician, when you feel like you can't diagnose people. And I think what really hit home for me is when I then developed my own symptoms that started to resemble some of the things my patients were saying. And I noticed that really it was the beginning stages of burnout. And it progressed on to full burnout to the point where I started really evaluating just within medicine, how are we approaching that word tired? When someone comes to us and says they're fatigued or they're exhausted, how do we approach that? And if the tests are negative, then what? And that's kind of where the 7 types of rest in my research and the majority of what I spend my time doing now developed out of.
And what is the most common symptom that patients present with usually?
Well, that's the thing. There is no most common. It really depends on the area of rest that someone is deficient in. Within my research, what I found was that there were 7 different types of rest. And so let's say, for instance, if someone has a physical rest deficit, well, that person may have body aches and pains. They may be getting sick more than other people. They have kind of a weakened immune system. So they're noticing ongoing sinus infections, chronic digestive issues. If someone has a mental rest deficit, that person may be experiencing, really thinking they're having early dementia. They have trouble concentrating. Or they walk into a room and forget why they walked in there, but they're 35. So it's, unlikely to be dementia, but it's a problem with concentration, what goes along with the mental rest deficit. Or it could be someone who has
Please go ahead.
Someone who has like a sensory rest deficit who is staying chronically agitated. They don't know why they are so irritable and so mean-spirited, but it's because they're in sensory overload all the time.
It's amazing because I've never thought about this. I've never thought about the different ways in which you can really exhaust yourself, right? We usually just think of physical exhaustion, and mental exhaustion is kind of known, but not really something. But the sensory exhaustion that you just mentioned, I mean, I totally felt it. I put myself there. I remember, working, I also work in healthcare and working long shifts and just responding where you're embarrassed by how you communicate with people, and you don't plan on it, but it just happens because you don't realize how you're being bombarded every second and you're being overloaded. That's absolutely amazing. I'm sorry. I'm processing all of this right now. And
that's what I want. I want people's mind to be expanded on this whole concept of rest. Because I think we have dumbed rest down to the point that most people think it's something we can just get to when we have time. Yeah. When my work is done or when I'm on vacation, I'll rest. Or as some people say, I'll rest when I die. Yeah. Well, a lot of people are living lives that are so far beneath the potential because of their refusal to rest. And really, it's not because they don't want to rest. It's because they have made it something that it's not. It is not a vacation. It is not quitting your job and just, laying on the sofa all day watching Netflix. Rest really means restorative activities. What restorative activities are you doing to replenish these 7 areas where you pour out every day?
And would you give us an example of what that would look like?
Yes. Well, let me name the 7. That may be helpful for some people to kind of see, because the first 3 examples we gave, they may be like, I don't have any of that. So the 7 types of rest, the 3 that most people are already familiar with to some degree are the physical, mental, and spiritual. Those have been pretty well documented in science and discussed. And the 4 that are less common that I kind of pulled out of the research and working with patients were emotional, sensory, social, and then creative. And it's interesting that, I've had over 100,000 people do the REST quiz, which is which helps people be able to determine which of the 7 types of rest they're most deficient in. And what I'm finding is that it is one of those 4 that most people who say they're tired all the time, that is where the deficiency is at. And, the beauty of that is once you identify where your main rest deficit is, you can focus your attention on doing restorative activities to replace the energy you're losing in that area. And that's when people start feeling better. That's when the energy comes back, because that's the kind of tired you are. You're not physically tired. You may be creatively tired, emotionally tired, sensory tired, or socially tired.
Wow. I mean, that makes so much sense. So much sense. And when I was reviewing your information, first and foremost, to those of you who are listening that are also entrepreneurs, Dr. Dalton-Smith was able to grow her mailing list exponentially just with this quiz, because it's what people are interested in. Like you say it and I'm like, I can't wait to go and take your quiz, right? I purposely hadn't taken it because I wanted to hear from you first and then go and take it and see. But I'm like really excited about this. This is groundbreaking work that you're doing. Like people are
It's really interesting.
People
really
are not
interesting
having
to
this
see.
conversation.
Yes. It's really interesting to see how entrepreneurs actually score, because so many entrepreneurs don't think of themselves as creatives. But if you think about it, to market to an audience, to stay at the top of your field, you have to be innovative. You have to be creating, even though you don't think of yourself as a creative because you're not painting art or doing music. But that is the group that tends to have the lowest scores in creative rest.
Wow.
And that is the most fatigued group that I see, because they are so unaware of how they use their creativity and drain it, that it continues to be a consistent deficit. And some of my most, I think my most important work has been when I'm able to actually go into companies and do workshops with their leaders and their teams to help them understand why they're not getting the growth that they're able to do. I think that is mind-blowing for most CEOs when they see the difference, because it's not that their team doesn't have potential. Their potential is not being optimized because they are not getting the correct restorative activities in their life.
And that, environment also comes into that, right? So like you're saying, you go into a corporate office. If the environment itself is not conducive to be able to allow your creativity to flow and have the proper rest, that would also play a large part in that. So can you speak to work at home? A lot of people, especially right now, are working from home. What would be something that you would suggest to people?
Well, and I'll probably start with, I guess, creative rest. So creative rest is the rest that you receive when you allow yourself to appreciate beauty in whatever form that is to you. It could be natural beauty. It could be man-made beauty like artwork or music. The easiest way to think about this is if you're someone who, when you go to the beach, you automatically feel better. You feel restored and energized. And, we can't really put a label on that scientifically on what that is, but that is what creative rest looks like. It's when something that is just awe-inspiring and beautiful awakens something inside of you, motivates and inspires you. Now, the way you do that at home is you evaluate where you're doing most of your work. If you're someone who's having to be innovative, is the space you're in allowing you to be restored in that way? So that could be something as simple as making sure you have artwork in your workspace that is inspiring to you. People who have that feeling of being at peace and rested and restored at the beach may benefit from painting a wall in their room in aqua color. The research that I looked at actually showed that people who have that response to water and bodies of water have a very similar response looking at that color, even though they're nowhere near the water. Wow. So just having items within your atmosphere, maybe a screensaver of the beach, maybe making sure that if another thing to keep in mind for people who work from home are the ergonomics of where you're working conducive to a restful body? After working for 2 hours, do you arise from that position with pain somewhere? Because that pain is letting you know something is not in a position that is helpful for it over the long haul. So that may mean having to have a footrest that you keep your feet on while you're sitting at the desk so that your legs don't get overly irritated, or some way of elevating your computer so that your wrists don't get overly agitated while you're working at your workspace. So there's so many different kind of nuances. It just really depends on the area of rest deficit that you have.
That's so interesting. And so now for our caregivers and warriors, cancer warriors, it's more of a mental game, right? Like, so there's the physical component and then there's the mental strain. What would you suggest?
Those two areas, particularly caregivers, I will spend a little focus on, have a huge amount of emotional rest deficit and oftentimes social rest deficit. Emotional rest is the rest we receive and experience when we allow ourselves to just be truly authentic, when we take our mask off and we're not trying to make our words digestible and pretty them up. We just say it as it is. And social rest is the rest we receive when we are around life-giving people. Now, the problem is most of us spend our time with people who are negatively pulling on us socially. Not that they're negative people, and I think that's something to be understood. Your kids, they're negatively pulling on you socially. They need things from you, your spouse, anyone that you're caregiving for, your elderly parents. All of these people are pulling on your social energy. They're not negative, but the way they pull on your energy is negatively draining you. The issue is oftentimes, specifically with caregivers, they will spend all of their focus on those areas where they're draining their energy and omit the need for that positive refilling. They won't have time out with friends. They won't go hang out with people who are actually pouring back into them, the people who don't need anything from them, but just are life-giving to be around. And I think that's super important because that's where support groups are helpful. You get both the emotional and social rest at the same time. You're able to honestly state how your feelings are and what's going on in your life, and you don't feel like you're going to be judged or criticized by feeling a certain way because you're around other people who understand. Now, I think the area with that gets difficult is it's not always easy to break away for a group session if you're the 24-hour caregiver for someone.
Right.
And so what the science showed that I think is very helpful for most people is that social rest and emotional rest can be virtual. The issue is it need not be on a phone or a text message. The ability to see someone else's face, their body language, their body movements, their facial expression, all of that is a very key part of the social rest, because that's when you're able to determine if someone is really feeling what you're feeling and relating to what you're saying. So there are a lot of online groups that are kind of social media driven. It's all texting and it's all writing, and you really can't feel anyone's empathy or sympathy or emotions, and you really don't feel understood. I always recommend for someone who feels like they need more social or emotional rest to find a friend that they feel comfortable speaking with, even if that friend millions of miles away. You can Skype or Zoom or WhatsApp, or there's so many apparatus out now that you can do virtual meetings with. Just schedule a 15-minute coffee date or wine date or whatever you want to call it, and just have 15 minutes with that person. Whoever you're caregiving for, chances are there's 15 minutes in the day that you can take to restore yourself so that you can continue to be the best caregiver you can be for them. Because you can't be your best if you're always working from your emptiness.
Absolutely. And, you make a very valid point about text messaging and not having a virtual meeting with somebody. It lacks the connectivity that we need as humans. And it lacks the, being validated for how you're feeling. So you feel that you're not being understood. You feel that you're a lone soldier, right? Even though everybody feels the same way, we have very similar experiences, and the feelings are the same, but we need that validation as human beings. We need to feel that we're not the only ones that are going through trials and happiness and all that. And the one thing too that I wanted to add, that I just rediscovered recently, is a Marco Polo app. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. And I've had an absolute blast with that because, you know, you could send that message. You don't have to, I love the 15 minutes and dedicating that time, but sometimes you just need a release, and you need to know that somebody out there is going to just receive it and get it. And like, it's what you're saying is so powerful and so needed for so many people. Now, how can people find you?
Well, the best way to probably reach me would be on my main website at ichoosemybestlife.com. You can access the quiz there by clicking the link at the top. It has all the free resources and things there as well. Corporations are best to reach out at me at drdaltonsmith.com.
Okay, that's amazing. And also, you do have a book. I don't want to leave without talking about your book, Sacred Rest, Recover Your Life, Renew Your Energy, Restore Your Sanity. I absolutely love this. And that book is available on Amazon, so we'll make sure to include the link. You know, this was truly eye-opening and an amazing conversation. And thank you so much for the work that you're doing. And I'm truly inspired by you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You are so, so needed in this world. And to all the caregivers and cancer warriors listening, the entrepreneurs, should you be on here too, definitely reach out to Dr. Dalton-Smith. This is something we all need to really incorporate within our lives. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Have a great one.
You too.